welcome to G3. Today is March 12th, 2015. I'm your host, Tina Chase Gilmore, and made it through that one. We have a great show for you today, as usual. Okay, little housekeeping. You can find us on facebook.com/G3 show, and we've been doing our chat room in Facebook, not in Facebook, in Friend Feed forever. And I mean forever. In the digital world, in the tech world, it's been forever because we not only have done it here, but we've done it on the Gilmore Gang. And we got word this week that Friend Feed, as if it wasn't already dead, it's really dead now. So as of some date in April, I don't know, in the beginning of April, none of the archives will be there anymore. It will be really, really gone. And I think I'm going to have a funeral for it. So that's what I have to say about that. So we're not going to point you to Friend Feed anymore. We can do comments in Facebook. Go ahead and comment there, and we'll hopefully be bringing you some new tools to chat with us during the show soon. Okay. I would like to introduce you to my lovely co-host today. Up in my upper left is Mary Hodder. Hi, Mary.
Hello.
How is Mountain View doing today?
It's sunny.
We'll take that. Okay. And up in my upper right, Hallie Sue Tucker. Hi, Hallie.
Hey, hi. It's also sunny.
Is it balmy in Boston?
No. I'm not going to say how cold it is, but it's not warm.
Okay. At our undisclosed location, coming to us, we will say that she is coming to us from San Francisco, but in an undisclosed location is the lovely Francine Hardaway. Hi, Francine.
Hi, Tina.
And our special guest today is Shaleen Gupta. She's a freelance reporter, and she has been sitting in on the Ellen Pao trial as of late, and has lots of interesting things to tell us about.
Hi, everyone.
Can't wait.
We had a little bit of a lockup on Francine, but we're hoping that's going to go away. Okay, so before we get into all the excitement that's been going on, I have a cry for help. Okay, let me explain this. You've all had this happen to you where there's a song that's running through your head and you cannot get rid of it. So this song has been going on, I don't know, maybe 3 days now. I think what I'd like to do is ask you for a special word that means being driven crazy by a song that's playing through your head over and over.
Meshuggah.
Meshuggah is a good one. I know that one. Rhythmitis or something. I mean, because this first thing, I'm literally being driven crazy. I can't seem to substitute another song for this. This is a really bad song, by the way, too. It's really it's not a song that I like. It's never been a song that I liked. I somehow it was on. I've got Sirius on in the car, and I was playing oldies stuff because it's comforting, and all of a sudden this song comes on, and I didn't change the channel because I didn't know this was going to happen to me, and now I'm going to use an expletive. I'm screwed because this is awful. Okay, so I don't even want to tell you what it is. Ask me what the song is.
What if
it doesn't matter what it is?
But
here's what you do. The song is this phenomenon is called an earworm, and what you do is you try to hum Tiny Dancer, and it'll go away. Because no one can hum that song. It doesn't make it, melodically, it doesn't make any sense. That's the antidote to an earworm. Hum Tiny Dancer.
Are you kidding me?
No,
I don't even know what
the
Tiny
answer.
Dancer is.
Okay, so
It's that
Francine's
Tina Turner song, Tiny Dancer.
Oh.
Think about
Tina
it. When you
Turner.
think about the structure of the song Tiny Dancer, it doesn't, it's not melodical.
It
You
doesn't
can't
hum.
do anything with it, so it can't get stuck in your head, and it gets the earworm out.
Oh, that's a riot.
I got it.
Okay,
Right.
I will try that. I am hoping for the best because, and now I know the term is called ear. There should be a more medically, like it should sound more medical than earworm, though.
No, earworm sounds very medical.
It does.
It's got the word worm.
Of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is Cher, get the fuck off my back because that's it's Cher. Black lady. Like this first thing, what is a 70s why are they playing this song? It was never popular. It was not a good
That's
song.
why.
Why am I being force-fed this song on the
Cheap.
70s channel when it wasn't good to begin with?
2 words,
off the
cheap
70s
licensing.
channel.
They got it for cheap, so they threw it on one of those compilation records.
Okay.
But maybe it's Shazam Mania or something, because Shazam is the product that lets you identify it. You knew the song. The worst is when it's in your head and you don't know it. You don't know it, and that's annoying. So
I unfortunately I did know the song, and I must confess also that the first concert I ever saw as a young child was Sonny and Cher.
Okay,
Ooh.
so it's imprinted.
yeah, it's
So we've got some problems going on
So
here.
forget
Okay.
it. It's
Okay.
imprinted.
Thank you for indulging my cry for help. I'm going to try Mary Hodder's tiny dancer elixir and see if this helps me. Antidote.
Another one is you could sing "I'm a Little Teapot." That's another one that.
Oh
Also,
my God, that's
That
an
would
earworms
I
out.
know that one.
itself.
Yeah, but Tiny
Okay.
Dancer works better because it's harder. I'm a Little Teapot is more
Didn't Elton
sing-songy.
John also have Tiny Dancer or something?
No,
Yeah.
it's the Tina Turner one.
Tina Turner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh wow.
I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna report back. I'm gonna get a hold of this earworm thing, and
you
all
guys,
will be better.
It's actually Tiny Dancer's Elton John. Private Dancer.
Oh, Private Dancer.
Oh,
You're right.
is
Private,
Tina.
private
dancer.
Dancer.
Of course.
Oh.
That's
There we go.
right.
Private Dancer.
I
Yeah,
was
it's the Tina Turner one.
right. Okay, here we go.
Jeopardy Queen.
Apologize, Mary.
Sorry. Anyway, it's the Tina Turner one though.
Okay.
That's the one. You can't
It's
sing it.
Private Dancer, Tina Turner.
Yes.
I'm going to try it. I'm going to report back. I'm going to let you know how this goes. And Cher, please
Yeah,
leave me
we-
alone. Okay. 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 I've gotten that off my back. So, as she creaks her neck. Okay. What's been going on? There's an exciting trial going on, huh?
Ellen Cow. Ellen Cow.
Okay, I think this is just a perfect way to say hello to Shailene. And Shailene, I will ask you something. I found out the other day that you just moved from New York City to Boston, and I got to question, that and this terrible winter that's been going on. But how's Boston treating you so far?
Actually, I moved from San Francisco to Boston, so it's been agonizing weather-wise.
Oh my God, what a dumb decision.
Yeah, questioning my life choices right now.
Yeah. But you're young. You can still get out of them.
Thanks. Thanks.
But you're from a cold climate originally, so and I am too. I'm from Michigan. You're from
Minnesota, and you would think that would give me immunity, but it's worn off. Like, I'm freezing.
yeah.
Yeah,
This is what I'm going to
surprise.
say. We do get used to the mild climate, and
Yeah.
maybe we have the memory of dealing with cold, but sometimes it really does.
The strength
Never
is
mind
gone,
the weather.
completely
I want
gone.
to know how you ripped yourself away from that trial.
Trial.
So let's hear about. Perhaps can you give us some impression of the trial, what it feels like in the courtroom, and again, we're talking about the Ellen Pao versus the Kleinert Perkins trial for gender discrimination. Is that the best way to describe that? Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Wrongful
Yeah.
termination.
No.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Go ahead,
yeah.
Shailene. Go ahead.
okay, all right. Yeah, so I have to say, I regret that I haven't seen Hermley examining Pow because I feel like the tension there has ratcheted up. It's actually like the prior 2 weeks have been almost a congenial atmosphere, I would say, in the courtroom because there's this fellowship that emerges when you're sitting in the courtroom, everyone's sitting there, and you've been there for 2 weeks. You're there for like 8 hours a day. And it becomes this weird, tight community where you're just like, oh my God, why are we in this courtroom sitting here all the time, going over the minutia of all of these crazy documents over and over again?
Mm. So, um,
That's all changed now, though,
That's
because
that's
the
gone
woman
now. Yeah.
lawyers
what
sticking it
Yeah.
to Ellen Pao.
can I
Right.
ask you? You all are following this pretty closely, or at least a few of you are following on Live Blog. What blogs are you following, and why are you choosing to follow those?
Recode.
Recode, because it's
Recode.
women.
And last
But
night, Kara
not
Swisher
just.
said at the event that I was at that was about women in Silicon Valley and the lack of women in Silicon Valley. She
I've never
said,
heard of that.
I'm the CEO of this company, and I decided that we're having 2 reporters there all day, every day. And that's it. Because this is really critical. It's really important to get everything. And I think that's fantastic. I thought it was wonderful, and the coverage has been great on Recode. And I just honestly don't want to read anything anywhere else because it's so good at
So a
Recode.
resounding recode. That's lovely.
Well,
Everyone.
I'm not resounding. I
Oh.
love Recode.
Okay.
But I started watching actually by watching on Twitter Shalene's stuff, and then she would retweet Davy Alba, who is at Wired, right? Also
Right.
wonderful. She's awesome, and I really like. I keep finding oddly because I never expect to do this, liking USA Today's coverage on a lot of different things, and I especially like Elizabeth, is it Weiss or Weiss? I think
It's
Wiesc,
Weiss.
and she's great. So there's not only great. I love on Recode. It's Liz
Okay,
Gaines,
let
and
me say something. Why are they
there's
sending everybody? Everybody is sending women to this trial. Everybody.
Mhm. Because they don't want to get in trouble if a guy comments on it. His comments could be misconstrued. This is the Vinod dude who wrote the book on women, and he just had to post that thing a week or two ago saying,
Oh,
I'm
Vivek
stepping
Wadhwa.
away from the topic because he's getting criticized. Of course, he's put his foot in it, and he deserves to be criticized, but nonetheless, I think every guy. The event that I was at last night was Futurecast at AT&T Foundry, talking about exactly this topic. And it's the center woman being interviewed by Andrew Keene is doing a documentary, and all the women around, they're like Stanford professors. It's Kara Swisher. It's all these great people, and then you have to go like 3 rows back to get any guys in the room, and they don't want to say anything for the same reason they don't want to say anything about this trial because they're terrified and they don't know what to do, and they're
Well,
afraid of being criticized.
that's interesting, but it's wrong because one thing I would like to read is a man's point of view on this trial because I'm no fool. First of all, I love Kara Swisher. I love Recode anyway, but that's not the issue. The issue is there must be more than one point of view, and from what I can see of this trial, it's one long, effort to intimidate her. Even after they terminated her, they basically said, we'll give you more money if you cooperate on your way out the door. We'll leave you on these boards if you cooperate. And all of these things, if you just, it feels to me like even on the way out the door, when she had already sued, they sort of patted her on the head and they're like, be good girl. Be good girl on your way out the door, and we'll give you cookie.
Right.
There are actually men covering
Shalene.
this trial, and so like first thing, there are actually men covering this trial. The New York Times had a fabulous overview. I can't remember his whole name, but David S. or something. Business Insider sent a man. Wall Street Journal sent a man. And second of all, it's not an open and shut case. I think this is what makes this trial so fascinating. There's reasonable grounds for Kleiner Perkins to say, you know what, we're a small company. We've promoted 3 people in our entire in this duration out of a total of 16. It takes a staggering amount of confidence to say, yes, I am someone who deserved to be promoted over these other 13 men who were not promoted, or 16 men. And I think that's a problem that happens again and again in the workplace. When a woman is passed over, there's this real question: is it me or is it the system? And there's
Yeah.
no easy
But
answer.
can I ask you one thing? I mean, the testimony last week was around events that were planned that she wasn't invited to, that only men were invited to. There was a ski trip, and the CEO of the company sponsoring the ski trip, I understand, said, "Why did you give us a list of your people and there's no women on it?" Right? I mean, he saw, and I think starts to get generational. So these younger guys are like, "What's the deal? Like, we asked you to send some names over. You're only sending guys. What's that?" There's the meeting, the Al Gore apartment meeting thing that's in her same building, and she's not invited. And we got into a little chat online with somebody. A guy's like, "Well, she's got a young child. Why is she going in and out of the building looking at people who are going into that meeting? Doesn't she have time to take care? She should be taking care of her kid." And I'm like, "What?" Like, so a lot of the assumptions about what she should be doing, it is, I see that it's nuanced, but there's some ridiculous things. She gets to sit and take notes in a meeting when the other people on her level are there. I mean, it's incalculable. What did she miss at a meeting where only men were invited, where somebody said, "Hey, you should meet the CEO," or "This company should be in your portfolio," or whatever? How do you measure that?
Well, it's more than that.
It gets really
Let's get it
complicated,
off
though.
the
Like,
sexist things and on to how you run a company. And Kleiner Perkins, whoever they did or didn't promote, they really you shouldn't really keep somebody for 6 years if they have no career path at the company. You don't tell them that at the end of 6 years. You tell them that at the end of 90 days. Maybe you tell them that at the end of 1 year. But she did get promoted a couple of times within the company. And that to me is weird. Why didn't they throw her out, for the same poor performance issues that 4 years later they asked her to leave for?
Well,
The sense
is
this
it perhaps an issue of knowing what the situation was with the her coworker and knowing that there was an affair going on? Maybe they were afraid to let her go.
I think
that-
that
I mean,
Is
it
it
sounds
this
like
is
she
possible?
more
had a real
analogous
Hang on.
supporter there in
Hold on,
John.
we've got two people talking at once. So, Shalene?
Okay, so a couple of things. Like, I think one of the big questions I do have is why didn't they split earlier? It's come across that John Doerr, who was Ellen Pau's mentor and the man who brought her on and hired her, really held out for her to stay when everybody else was pushing her out, and she would have been let go earlier. But my second question then is like, why did she want to stay if she could see this is the way that the cards were stacked and she's clearly a smart, brilliant woman? Why stay in such a hostile environment or somewhere where it's become that difficult? And then, secondly, to Hallie's point about all of these incidences, the thing is, when you get into the courtroom, she's completely right. It is nuanced. That ski trip, there's an explanation for the ski trip, which I think the partner ends up saying something like he thought it would be inappropriate for men and women to share the same cabin, which,
He said women do not want to share a room, but guys, we could get two guys to share a room, but women will not want to share a room with another woman partner, I think is what they meant. If I
Right.
read
That's
it
ridiculous. That's totally
Right.
ridiculous.
it was
I
ridiculous.
mean, that's crazy.
But I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Shalene's
Go ahead.
point about how, why would she stay? I mean, okay, if we're going to take the Sheryl Sandberg view on this, she just was leaning harder. People who want advanced careers stick with it. Like, there's going to be some tough stuff, and you do that. I also think, to the earlier question about, why did it take 6 years? This is analogous to the kinds of things that happen in law firms where, you're hired in, you're a junior associate, you get promoted to a senior associate. That happens over several years,
Right.
and there's a whole bunch of people in the running to make partner, and then it gets winnowed down to maybe 1-2 partners a year are added.
Right.
And so, I think this is similar where you don't really know who's going to succeed because it's a multi-year process to get successful companies, to see who has good investment strategy, to develop the relationships, the networking. You might know in 90 days if somebody's totally not working, but it takes, law firms let people go at 6 years too. That's
Right.
normal.
Well, I'm more interested now in the difference between our perspectives and Shalene's, and I'm wondering if it's generational because millennials don't take shit. They
Yeah.
don't stick around at jobs where they're told they might not succeed, and they do leave and go on to something else. Whereas that didn't really used to be the case, especially women, if they wanted to succeed, they sucked it up for years and years and years and thought they would make it. I think your generation is, to me, doing something really terrific, which is not sacrificing the best parts of their lives to
No.
some company that at the end of the day is going to terminate you anyway. But that's a kind of I'm just interested in whether your perspective comes from being part of a different generation.
I can see that, but I would say actually my perspective comes more from just being in the courtroom for 2 weeks because there's
Oh.
something about, I mean, Hermley is an excellent lawyer. She is so good. She gets up on the stand and she owns the room. And, despite whatever feminist beliefs I have, it is not a clear cut case at all, and things start to unravel. And the thing about the coverage is everything is moving so quickly. Reporters are under pressure to take notes, in some cases to tweet, and then you're also like going
Yeah.
back and forth with your editor about what needs to happen. There's deadline pressure. So a lot of the times what's getting reported is sort of the stuff that's easy to put out, that all male ski trip, the all male Al
Yeah.
Gore dinner, because it's interesting, it's sexy, it's
Yeah.
it's very readable. And some of
Do
the
you
other
then
stuff,
do you then believe that Ellen Pao is really not a likable person and could be construed by her superiors at Kleiner as not a likable person?
I don't know because I haven't seen her on the stand, and I wish I
Oh,
Well, how
had.
right.
It's
about how
killing
about in the
me.
room? I met with
But
her at Kleiner Perkins. I met
uh,
with Randy Komisar 3 times. She was there all 3 times. And I have
what
to
did you?
say, Randy is very likable, and Ellen was a little bit more stiff and a little bit more, she wasn't as friendly, but I
Mhm.
didn't think it was bad. The other thing is she deferred to Randy because he's the partner and she was the associate. And so I didn't really know why she was like that. I mean, we had a lot of VC meetings where we would meet with a partner and an associate and go through things. And you never really know why an associate is more quiet or maybe less friendly, but
Yeah.
I remember at the time remarking to the other person that I was there with, the guy that I had brought in for my company, that, she did seem a bit more, um, I hate to say the word prickly because she wasn't prickly, but it was like 2 steps back from that, and I don't know if that's just, this would be in 2007. I don't know exactly where. It was July 2007. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that stands in this, but I can say from my one anecdotal experience, she wasn't necessarily as friendly as some of the men that I met with who were the associates at other firms. I met with no other associates at any firm. We met with every firm, at one time or another, and none of the other associates were women. We met with some
That's
women
Well, it's
partners.
that's
it's
absolutely
interesting because
fascinating,
in
and
my
I feel
meetings with
like
VC firms,
Oh,
none of
oh.
them were friendly. I mean, they were all prickly, so that wouldn't have bothered me. I think Randy Commissar might be an exception. He's darling, but
Yeah,
that's his personality.
I think
yeah,
this really is a
yeah.
trial that comes down to personality at some level, and those are sort of the intangibles that it's really hard to get a sense of. It's fascinating to hear about how I did meet her for about a few seconds and say hello in passing, and she was absolutely lovely to me. But the person who had her job with her as chief of staff when Shay was on the stand, and he owned it. He was really friendly. And I have to ask the question when you've got a room full of junior partners, and it's the question, who stands out? Who do you want to promote?
Well, there's
How
that, but
much?
there's also the question of are we, I mean, are we ascribing a little bit of friendliness by a guy? Because men are not expected to be friendly. They don't have to be, right? In a
Right.
business situation, whereas women are expected to be. We're supposed to be nurturing, we're supposed to be friendly, supposed to make everyone comfortable. So if a guy's a little bit friendly and a little bit prickly, are we saying, oh, that, wow, he's so friendly, that's really nice, and he's got a point of view? And are we looking at a woman who's like the exact same amount or degrees, and
Is
are
a
we saying,
bitch.
wow, she's just not that friendly?
Oh,
And we
absolutely. And the
ignore,
thing
yeah,
is, we keep looking at, during the trial, we keep looking at performance reviews, and it's just like she's territorial. But then you see that same language written on the junior partners who were promoted. And you have to ask the question, okay, even if different, if different personalities are emerging from the performance reviews, is it because men and women are expected to behave differently? Can we
yeah,
even trust these performance reviews, which are being used as evidence? And there's no
yeah.
clear answer on that. I'm not
I had a
convinced.
question about the performance reviews because my understanding was they ended up having a performance review one year that said good things about her. Then it was
Mhm.
redone, and their practice was to have the names of the people who were reviewing listed. It was
Mhm.
open
Mhm.
information. But
Mhm.
apparently, the guy she had this affair with, who told her he was separated, not married, and then later it was a lie, and was he on the same level with
Dog.
her?
Yeah, I think he was a
Well,
He was
partner.
it's
promoted to a senior partner.
he was
Yeah.
later, or was he starting at the same level she started at?
I
Because
think he was a junior.
I got the feeling that they had all started at a similar level, and then with these performance appraisals, that it was found that he was allowed to write about his ex girlfriend who didn't want to see him anymore, and essentially wrote a performance appraisal that she was kind of a bitch, right? As well as another guy who was one of her first uh, came in around the same time, but then was promoted above her. The Chinese guy, is that right? Because I'm
So
thinking
that part of testimony actually was a pretty confusing day.
it
I think
was.
it was. There was confusion among the reporters about what actually happened, and I would disagree actually with. I think one of the articles was trying to make the point that there was positive feedback about Ellen and then Ellen Pao, and it was taken out and replaced by negative feedback by him. And I don't think that's actually what happened at court. What has become clear is there was a negative performance review written about Ellen Pao in 2011, and they wanted to push her out. But John Doerr, who was her mentor and her boss, really pushed to say, let's keep her in. She's done a good job. Let's give her a second chance. And he did this against the grain of all of his managing partners.
This too seems to me to be really difficult because he did come across as he's trying to do the right thing and actually arguing with other male partners to be more fair to this woman. And now the whole thing's blown up in his face. Because frankly, I don't think what happens with this case, anybody will even remember if it went one way or another, except everybody will remember that it kind of opened up this Pandora's box of, you know, sexual discrimination in the workplaces. The other part is everybody's mixed up even with the fact because she had, there was this sort of predatory guy that she had this affair with who kind of pushed himself on her and others that people think
What
this
about the
case
other
is
woman who,
about. In
Hang
fact,
on.
they think the
testified?
Hang on.
case is about, sexual harassment, and it's not about sexual harassment, right? That adds a whole nother confusion. And then she ended that affair and then later continued to work with this guy. This is Ajit Nasri, I
Yeah.
think. And
Gene was on.
then when they tried to push him out, she went up to bat for him. So
Well, what
talk
also
about
happened to the other
confusing.
woman?
Hang on, Francine, what?
Whatever happened to the other woman? There
What?
was another woman, Trey Visalo,
Mm.
or
Mhm.
I want to know what happened there because she testified, and you might have been in the courtroom when she testified.
Yeah, I was there. She testified on the first day. She was the first one up. I think eventually she gets promoted not to senior partner, but to somebody who's a general partner, which means that they get interest from the funds. Again, this is where it gets nuanced, and you're just like, wait, what's the difference between a senior partner and a general partner? But
Money.
eventually, but
money.
True.
Then
True.
didn't she get laid off or fired also?
They were downsizing, and I think she was one of the people who was let go in the
Right.
downsizing.
I think Francine, you're right. I think she's one of the most interesting pieces of the puzzle because what she did and how she was dealt with is important. And I was sorry that it kind of went really fast in the first week or two.
Mhm.
And I think she's an important piece and I think she was again, it seemed like she was one of those bridging she's not the out and out feminist. She went to door, I believe. You can tell me, Shalene, if this is wrong about the same guy harassing her, and she did not want it to be public, allegedly, because she didn't want her husband to hear about it, right? What do you know?
Um, my understanding is she went to Ray Lane. And so this
Okay,
is where there's some interesting differences in testimony because she said she went to him because she heard that Ajit Nazare was going to comment on her performance review, which gave her a lot of concerns,
right.
understandably. And so she told Ray Lane, like, this has happened. And he asked her, what do you want me to do? And she said, I don't know. And she assumed that he would look into it or do something. Now, Lane's own testimony is that they had this conversation and he was like, I'm worried about you. And you should go home and talk this over with your husband
That's
and
what,
make a
yeah.
decision about investigating this.
Yeah, but
And he didn't look into it.
that's ridiculous because the guy came to her hotel room door in a bathrobe, and asked to be let in. I'm saying this so that the people on the podcast who maybe aren't following the
Right.
trial will know what happened.
And that was after, Francine, you're right, exactly. That was after a alleged client dinner in New York, right? Where he took her to New York to have this client dinner. I'm mixing it up maybe. But again, it was like, oh, sorry, it's just you and me at a hot, sexy restaurant late at night, and no client, in fact, appeared. So it sounds very like, yeah, I've seen this
Exactly.
before.
So
But
he appears at her hotel room in his bathrobe,
Right. Like,
and Ray Lane doesn't investigate it.
But timing is everything, and I think that I've been a little confused about when some of these events are occurring. The guy comes to her hotel room in a bathroom. This is before their affair or their out of the office relationship, or afterwards, because it means one thing if it's beforehand, it means another thing if it's during, and
No, this
it
is a
means another
different
This is
thing
someone
if
woman.
it's
else. This is
after.
someone else.
This is
This
someone
is someone
else,
else. There's
Tina.
two women here.
This
This
is
isn't Ellen Powell.
this is the other woman.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is Trey Vassallo.
Vassallo.
Got it.
And there's no
Better.
relationship with her. Nazare
Okay.
just hit on her repeatedly.
yeah, except there's the relationship of the fact that this guy who hit on this is the same guy who hit on Ellen. Ellen ended up having an affair and ending an affair with this guy who was sort of one of her competitors and then ended up being promoted after this and after hitting on this
Other woman.
Vassallo, the other woman, Vassallo, who was also a woman partner there. So, and I think the most important thing was she's actually Tracy or Trey Vassallo. I'm reading a Recode article. I'll put it on our page. Is that I think the obvious point of this inquiry wasn't just the salaciousness of it, but that this was going on. A woman, not Ellen, was reporting this before the Ellen thing ever happened, and they weren't doing anything about it.
And then when Ellen forced it to be reported by first threatening to sue and then suing, now it all comes back on Ellen. And
Yes.
and that's to me, that's at the very least annoying, and at the very most, significant indication of what the culture was at Kleiner Perkins, which by extension is what the culture is at all their portfolio companies, which by extension is what the culture is in Silicon Valley.
Hmm.
And that's the subtext of this whole trial. Ellen Pao is a metaphor.
Right.
I think that's really true. I mean, that's why I said what I said about the characters, like little figures in a little play, will, disappear from our minds. But it opens up what's going on. And I think the thing I find difficult is all the kind of crap where people are cut out of meetings and people are, being propositioned. And I've had the same, I was in sales and marketing. I had a lot of the same stuff in sales where like, oh, the client's like taking you out to the fancy restaurant. It's just to be everybody. And it's just you and him. And it's like, come on, it's just so stupid. And I think this would put perhaps the fear of God in some people, men in certain firms, not to do these things. And in some other people's minds, maybe you could hire an HR person. That is a very obvious. Can we talk about how much lack of HR support there was here? This is
You don't
crazy.
have to hire an HR person. There's an app for that. You can outsource your HR if you don't want to take on the overhead,
But
You don't
did
have,
they?
no, I mean it clear to me that there was no HR oversight. I mean, that's the thing that bothers me the most about this trial is that these guys who are trying to tell other companies how to expand and grow and run their business as badly as I could ever imagine.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Absolutely. And you want to talk pattern recognition. They're busy teaching young men, oh, this is how to do it. This is how we do it.
Mary, you had a term, filter through
Oh,
aggression.
yeah, yeah. By filtering everything through aggression, in these various forms, we weed out women. We weed out, actually, what I want to say is really there's the defaults and the non-defaults. Because I think you start dividing people up into categories, and that's problematic. There's women, there's people of color, there's women of color. I mean, it's like, that's ridiculous. There's people who are not the defaults, and some of them are white men. They're not straight, or
Right.
they are straight, but they're not the blocker, the rejecter, the hard hitting, aggressive guy.
Hmm.
And it's that smaller group of white men who behave in those ways, and that has led us to a culture in Silicon Valley where it's Lord of the Flies, frankly, and we
Yep.
glorify this. And then anybody who's successful or anybody who gets a deal has to run through that filter, and very little else is let through. I mean, if there's a few examples, but it's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And even in the last 20 years, the number of women who are in STEM training, who are, working as engineers, who are in the C-suite, who are on boards has just, plummeted. And I think it's this filter of aggression, and the glorification of the Lord of the Flies mentality. It's crazy, but that's what we do here.
I always find it super annoying with the STEM discussion. Like, if we all just be good girls and go back to age 12 and learn STEM, well, there'll be all these women in companies. And the bullshit is, as you often will see, think about it. What do VCs do when they have a coder who's a founder? Very quickly, they replace him with one of these, hockey team, football team buddies of theirs who's a business
Mhm.
guy who's been in sales or marketing, who has a fucking MBA and can't code to save his life. So wait. So women should all be coders? We know
That's why I wrote my
Francis wrote
post
the book.
about women not coding. Exactly why I
Exactly.
wrote that. It's being a
Well,
secretary again.
yeah,
Yep.
it's coding, or it's we need more women mentors, or we need more STEM
Right.
training generally. We need negotiation training. We need women speaking. We need women getting speaker training. I mean, these are all salves, but the deeper problem is that we have this Lord of the Flies culture. If we don't deal with the
Absolutely.
culture, we don't get the salves making any decent effect. I
And
know
I
tons of
heard two
women
friends of
engineers.
mine, Mary, Brian Solis and Chris Sod. They do a great podcast called Context
Mhm.
Matters, but they were arguing on that program, and Jeremiah Oyang, another friend of mine, was arguing with them that Silicon Valley was a basically a if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen type of atmosphere that made the sorted out the best from everyone else, and everyone who left, just wasn't good enough. And
It's
Yeah.
a meritocracy. It's a meritocracy. They're looking for people who look just like them. If you're Indian
Here's
or properly Asian, if you're a straight white man, that's the meritocracy, and
You're
everybody
saying,
else
wait.
is left
You are
out.
saying mirror, like a mirror
Mirror.
on the
Yeah.
wall
Yeah,
autocracy.
Oh,
exactly. It's
That's
a
awesome.
meritocracy. And so the thing is, anybody who says that, oh, we're just filtering out so we get the
The
best
the
people. The
best.
criteria is set up. It's this filter of aggression. You only
Right.
get the aggressive people, and if that's your filter, just be honest about it. But you're basically saying that other qualities that are good, that don't, mesh with the filter of aggression, they're not there, and it's crap. I mean, I think it's garbage.
the
I
irony
think
is
there's a
that
bigger problem, though. I think it's that we all have the filter of aggression. There's a way in which we're all conditioned to think of these things as the traits for success or what success looks like. And so when we each see something different, then that doesn't calibrate. And, it's easy to recognize something as good or successful once it's been classified as good or successful. But
Yeah.
how do you recognize raw talent when it's in a package you don't typically think of as what's good?
Right.
Have you, I
exactly.
Well,
mean, I
and
ran
the
into
and
it.
so the other thing is that you've got this set of beliefs that we have about what is successful, but it's not just what is successful.
Right,
It's who
exactly.
has value and who doesn't, who is worth my time and who is not,
Right,
who has
Yes.
right,
something to say and who does not.
right.
And we have these unconscious beliefs, and we're all walking around with them. And the problem is we're not having the deeper conversation about, like, well, what is valuable? And are we
Yeah.
going to live in a Lord of the Flies manner, or are we going to grow up and actually expand our views on what has value? And so, can women have value? Yeah, yes, they can. And can people who are, not straight have value? Yes, they can. I mean, are people who are another color, who aren't in the prescribed small color set that's acceptable, have value? Yes, they can. But
Well, and
we're
the
not
the
consciously
interesting
making that statement and figuring out how to
Exactly.
get through.
Uh,
The
That's
interesting thing
great. And
is
that's a
that
really good point.
I got through the filter of aggression when I was having my career. And as a result, I spent about 20 years being a bitch on wheels. I kind of knew that I was, but I felt like I had to be. And it really did make me successful. And then I started, this is funny, practicing yoga. And I realized there was a whole other set of qualities that I wanted to have that I had had when I was younger and lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a conscious effort to redevelop, the loving, the womanly, the loving, the nurturing, all of those characteristics in myself that I basically stepped on for 20 years. And it made me sick, but I stepped on them.
I mean, at
Right. And
some
there's
point
also
we
that
have to
question of what,
we sort of have to embrace our what makes us wonderful, and be that. And I think
well,
that's what you're saying.
there's also another question of what do we consider success and value?
Hmm.
Because a lot of the time we measure it sort of on quote unquote that stereotypical sort of male aggressive alpha male scale of it's
Right.
money, it's power, it's being the center of the room. It's not necessarily the person who has the most friends or who's the most trusted. That's
Right.
never really
You,
held up.
You
Or
know,
somebody who
Shalene, again,
volunteers.
I'm saying this to you because you're young and you have a lot of your life ahead of you. But, at the end of the day, what I'm most proud of in my life and what I feel most successful about is having been a parent and a foster parent and
Right.
having made my foster children take the leap out of poverty and into the middle class. And if you ask me, what makes people successful, that's what I would tell you is their impact on other people.
Yep.
But you're right, that's not what is defined as success, certainly in
I
Silicon
mean,
Valley.
certainly. Well, I mean, I think it goes further than that. Ask, any ambitious young woman my age who's, do they say, I want to be a mother and
Mm.
take care of the home first and foremost? No. And if they do
No.
say that, there's a good chance there are a lot of feminists who are going to be like, what on earth are
Yeah.
you thinking?
Right.
So I think we just need a broader definition of what success
So you mean
is
your
and what we
generation,
value.
and I know you can't speak for your whole generation, but it appears to me that millennials are more interested in things that are less aggressive, like doing good, like not, prostituting themselves for high-paying jobs, like, you know.
Because there aren't any high-paid jobs. But anyway,
Besides the point.
can I add one quick thing, which is I was thinking about it feels so much when you're, say, at a conference or you're talking with people, and you could just see it always feels like ching ching cash register eyes that they're like thinking, what could this person do for me? Should I talk to this person? And it's so sick, and that it's so obvious. It's like somebody will do a favor for somebody if that'll somehow help them out. And I just think it's a way of looking at power that is it's to my mind not very female. I think mothers, teachers, women, typical whatever female instincts towards power is to empower others, to share the power, to teach a kid how to walk, to teach someone how to do something, to share context, to create community. Remember that, like we were at community
Mhm.
thing?
Yeah.
And that so often I've seen, even in my own son, who's a darling, but an alpha male, and part of that group already is that you are fighting to take somebody else's power away. So I think a male perspective is a real, if I have the power, then I can go, ha ha, you don't. And a female power perspective is to empower people. And that so often I've had instances where if you help somebody, a guy looks at you like, you're such a loser. Like, why would you help somebody?
Don't you think
I
Or in
mean,
my
it's
case, they
don't you
didn't
think
even see it as
sometimes that this
a threat.
has to do with individual power versus collective power? And that I think women are often more comfortable in a collective power situation instead of being the center of power and trying to develop that or attract that?
I
I'd
don't
say that
necessarily
I
think that, but what I
So
think
no, so
is,
no.
so I think
I
no,
don't know. It's
but if
unclear.
but I guess when I tried, when I started to change and I started to try to help people more and really be the person I wanted to be, people suspected me of having an agenda. And it was like, oh my God, she's helping me. She has an agenda. And
Mm.
I used to have to say to people, I'm 60 years old. What could my agenda
to
possibly
be.
be? You know,
I remember when Steve and I had moved to South Carolina from New York City. It's just a similar feel, You go from New York City, where you ask directions and people tell you to go fuck off, to South Carolina, where you ask someone for directions and they give you it's like a nice long story, and then they get to know you, and And he was like very suspicious of this because this just wasn't the way it was done. But you know what? It's a different way, and it's a wonderful way.
I'm much happier, I'll tell you that. I am so much happier than I used to be. It's absolutely incredible. And being of help and of service it's way better than whatever is going on at that Kleiner Perkins trial, on either side.
But
Mhm.
it does, I think it does bear in mind this question, though, because I think the people who want power and the people who value it and who are willing to fight for it and for the money, they get it. Unfortunately, those things still have a lot of currency in society. So if you don't think like that, the fight to get these things is much, much harder.
Well, why? It, I mean, in this trial, Ellen Pao is fighting right now, right? And
Hmm.
so why is it happening now? I mean, we've kind of gone through a better part of a year on this show with just being surprised at how much women and the topics of women are in the news, in tech, in the news in general. Just like that, it's been almost something that we couldn't get away from, week after week. So,
We could
what
talk
is
about
this
the Apple
likely to
Watch.
do? We could talk about the Apple Watch. I'm sure we will talk about it for a moment. Um, but is this likely to, I don't know, to change something? I mean, do we have to just wait for the outcome, or it just is the trial itself going to speak? Just the fact that it's there and it's happening. Is that what's it going to do?
I want to know what it's going to do for Shailene's like generation. What do you think it's doing for your women, aged women? What are they thinking?
I'm curious to see what happens when my generation gets to a point where more of us are in positions of power and are in those senior roles. Because right now, I think there is a big generational divide that you see in companies in terms of who's in power, how are they thinking, how do they define success, versus this generation, which has sort of been reared in a post-recession,
Yeah.
resources aren't as available. Hey, there's this new thing called social media, which means anyone can talk to anyone and is a great equalizer and gives everyone a voice. So I think, there's a consciousness that things are changing, that power and success look different in different people.
And
And
do
I
you
think
think
that's
that's
going to
why we
change.
hear about Tinder and we hear about are people coming forward because women in your group are like, we're not going to do this. This is not okay.
I think so. And I think women all over are coming out and saying things.
Hmm.
Okay.
So I want to
Yeah.
answer that question. I think that what the Power trial does, if we don't have the deeper conversation about what success is, about who we are, men and women, people of color versus white, people who are privileged versus people who aren't, the defaults versus the non-defaults, if we don't have that conversation, things become that much more toxic, that much more hostile,
Hmm.
and the defaults who have the power become that much more afraid of the non-defaults for various reasons. And so that fear, I think, breeds suspicion. I think it will bring on an even worse situation than we're having. I hope, cross my fingers, that we start having this conversation that goes to a deeper level and we don't get hung up on who's learning to code, or like who's got a mentor, or who could get speaker training, or whatever who could lean harder. I mean, whatever the salve of the moment is. My God, could we please have the deeper conversation, because the toxicity is so great, the suspicion, the fear between these different groups of people who are very divided right now. That's what I hope we do. And my fear is that if we don't have it, it's that much worse for every generation following on. You
So I
just go
think
that
That's
much
that's such a
into it.
great
really a
point, because I
diversity
feel like there's,
conversation.
the after effect of being in the trial and sort of watching this very intelligent, clearly successful woman argue, is you start wondering, where was I denied something I deserved because of sexism or because of racism? And you start imagining this
Right.
shadow life of,
Yeah.
where would I be in my career if I was someone else? And it's impossible to answer,
Hmm.
because if you were someone else, you wouldn't be who you are.
Right.
But that leads to a sort of inferiority complex, just because, I love that we're picking apart the problem. I love that we're all talking about these issues. But, a side effect is I think I have less confidence as a result. I never questioned that I could be the president of the United States growing up. Today, I just don't think that would happen.
Do you
I
think that's
think
a
they're
big
having
part
that
of the
conversation too,
have
because
have not income equality issue? Is that really what we're looking at? Because I know, weren't the jurors listening to her salary of $33,000 a month plus bonuses and kind of rolling their eyes? Can you tell us about the jury a little, or you're not even allowed to talk about it?
Nobody said that I'm not allowed to talk about it. We're just not allowed to talk to the jurors. I didn't see them rolling their eyes, and for the most part, I've just been stunned by how closely they're following the trial and how carefully they're taking notes. I think they're taking this very, very seriously.
Did you see the question a jury asked today to the judge? Well, even when you plan a wedding, you have an agenda. Does this trial have an agenda? That was like, that was the best.
but the conversation that we're having, again, beneath the conversation that we're having, is a diversity conversation. and it's an opportunities conversation. And I'm beginning to feel uncomfortable that there are no men in this conversation. Because I know a lot of men who really feel like they're left out too,
Yeah.
and like Vivek Wadhwa, that they can't even say anything because they're men, and so they can't enter the woman discussion, and that just makes it all worse.
Maybe
Yeah,
we
and I
should.
think we're going to see
Yeah, I
another
think
feeling of suppression where I've been talking to my boyfriend about this case a lot, and he's white, and he pointed out that something that's happening now is a lot of organizations are trying to get more women and more people of color going on. So it's sort of breeding this insecurity of like, well, I'm a white guy. Will anyone want me because I have no diversity, quote unquote, to offer?
God.
Like there really needs to be like, as Mary said, a conversation to get rid of where everybody can speak regardless of their gender, regardless of their race.
We have
This
And I
backed
I
everybody into a corner.
I
That's what
have
we've done.
I happen to have something up on my screen here, and I will give you a little piece of it. So this is something actually, and not plugging anything here, but this is from the Salesforce blog, and it's something that Parker Harris had written about a few days ago, and it has to do with diversity in tech. And I'll give you just the couple of points that they are looking at and trying to help, I guess, facilitate. One is to be transparent and facilitate an open dialogue. And this point has to do with the environment and fostering an environment that allows for open discussions and having tough conversations and allowing people to express their opinions. Another point is to address unconscious bias. And, I think these are all these points that we've been bringing up today. No matter how inclusive we strive to be, it's hard to step outside of yourself and see the assumptions you bring to a situation. That we're talking about this in this case. It's like, who's judging here? Who's making the rules, and what do you bring to it? That it's really important to address your own biases and on a subconscious level. And the other is to develop diverse tech talent early. And here I'm seeing points about that. This starts with our children's educational system, and it requires mentorship and fostering of talent along the way, early. So, I was happy to see that this kind of post, this blog post and this attention to diversity is happening in some of our, big tech businesses. And I think, and I don't want to applaud them or anything, but this is what we should be talking about, at least in my opinion.
I do think that will be a legacy of this, and a positive legacy. And the unfortunate lack of legacy here is I'm supposed to go at 3 and I have to leave. I'm
Right.
sorry. So I'm gonna disappear.
Hallie, we can say goodbye to you right now. Thank you so much.
I
We'll
wanna hear
finish
more
up
about
with
the
the
Apple
other
Watch.
3. Okay. Have a safe meeting
Okay.
and journey to it.
Good to talk to you guys.
Bundle up.
bye.
Okay, so we'll let Hallie go, and I'll do a little shifting in the monitor in a second, but we'll wrap up. Anyone want to sort of have some closing? Maybe we can close this trial a little bit as far as our discussion today. Any other questions for Shalene?
Well, my questions are about what's happening today, and I think Shalene has the same questions. It's huge.
Pretty much.
Okay. So, and Shalene, I also noticed that you, is it today that you have another article that in Fortune that was published?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Lesbians in tech.
Yeah, lesbians in tech. That's I got through about half of it. It looks like a good one, and I'm anxious to end the show and read the rest of it.
Thank
If
you.
any of our viewers want to find that, we can go to Fortune. We'll post a link to it on our
I'll
page.
find it.
How's
If I
that?
want to find it, I'll find it.
You'll find it. We all know how to find things, right? Um, and Mary, actually, Francine, can you? We saw the closing of the doors of a publication in Silicon Valley called GigaOM. Can you want to give us a little brief on their history and just something?
Can I
Mary, hang
say
on.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to add one more thing regarding this overall issue,
Sure.
and throw it out there. And I thought we were still going to just wrap up a little bit more with
Oh,
it.
okay.
So sorry.
That's
So
okay.
the thing that I wanted to say is, so I do a lot of work in privacy and personal data control technology and whatnot. And I look at that issue. That is the issue that underlies our whole economic system in Silicon Valley, right? Everything's been designed here for the last 20, 30 years around the taking of people's personal data without them really being too aware, although we do get those ads that reflect what we searched on 2 weeks ago. So there's some clues. But my contention is that if women had been, if we had a different system, if we weren't living like Lord of the Flies here, if women were on boards, if women were in the C-suite, if women were, very represented in engineering rooms over the last 30 years, that we would have a different system, that we would not have defaulted into something where we are sort of, it's both aggressive and manipulative to take that data and to not really share with people the real transaction. So just the last point that I have really is, if markets are conversations, right? So if I go to the farmer's market and I hand over $5 and I get some vegetables or fruit or whatever, that's a conversation. I'm asking about the product. I'm paying the money. We make an agreement. I know what the charge is. When I share data for free online, it's surreptitious. And I'm not really a part of the transaction. I give my attention. I give my data. And it all kind of happens under the table. And my feeling is that we would be having a real market conversation that was much more direct, and we would have all the technology to support that built after 20 years instead of all the technology built to support this other secret model of taking people's data, if women had been there. If we'd been really fully represented. And so the loss about why, the economic loss, I think, is we leave billions on the table when we don't have the direct market conversation where we actually share data when we want to, and the data's real because we're not lying and hiding about our data, because everybody does that, right? So the data's screwed up and the system's kind of screwed up and everyone's trying to get something for nothing instead of having a real market conversation in technology. And that's the loss, the economic loss in not having women part of these structures, the power structures that are Silicon Valley. So that's kind of my big point on all
You
this.
sound like Doc Searles, though, and he's a man.
I don't care. It's what I believe. And I
Yeah.
don't think that Doc would think of this at all because, to be honest, I think not that Doc isn't supportive of women in technology, but I don't think he thinks about the loss of what happens when women aren't here.
Oh,
And
maybe
that's
not.
totally different than what he thinks. He's saying, yeah, we need to have a market conversation.
Yeah.
And that it's not good to just take people's data, but that's as far as it goes. How did we get here? We don't have women as part of the power structure. And so we're screwing everyone because of it. And we just take it as a given. And I don't think it would be this way if women were in the power structures.
Well, if that's true, we can't go back in time. And
No,
we
we
can
can't,
only
but we
go
could
from
fix
like
it.
where we are now.
Yeah.
But that's the loss. And so you
It
think
is,
about
it
like
is.
what's
It can-
the loss going forward? How much better could our products be? How much better could our systems and our economic market transactions be? How much more money could we make if women were in the power structures?
Oh, yeah. There's a nod
If women
given to
and
that.
others.
And others.
There's-
I mean, if women, any non-defaults, if any
Right.
non-defaults were
Right.
there.
It's like people who used to say, we have to design this so my grandmother can use it. That's, that's
It's a piece of it, for sure.
yeah.
Okay.
You want me to talk a little bit about GigaOM?
Just a little, yeah, a little something. I
It's
think that they
another
deserve it.
major metaphor. GigaOM was a wonderful tech blog started by a guy who spent most of his career being a reporter, came over here from India and made a name for himself for the quality of the work that he did, and started a company of his own and worked so hard on it that he actually, I mean, not that only the company was responsible, but he actually did have a heart attack in his 40s.
You're speaking of Om Malik,
I am speaking
whose
of Om
name
Malik,
is part of the Giga
Giga
Om
Ohm, and it shut
company.
down 2 or 3 days ago because it ran out of money and it had taken a lot of VC money. And I wrote a piece about it because I really feel like digital media is not in a position yet where anyone should be taking VC money because the business model is not sorted out. And I can see it because the print advertising revenues are gone. The digital advertising revenues are coming, but they're coming at much lower rates. So that, if you were a VC, you would think that you would know that the underlying system doesn't support the 10x returns or whatever it is
Hmm.
that VCs want. And the fact that Ohm was given so much money is, some kind of negligence on the part of VCs who didn't do
Oh,
any due diligence about the media business. But on the other hand, we have lost something really wonderful, and I feel very bad about it and very personally bad for Ohm.
how much did Giga Ohm take?
$22 million.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
that
Okay.
is
That is
totally
crazy.
ridiculous.
I didn't
You
realize.
can't support that, no matter how much research you try to sell, no matter how
Well,
many conferences. And look at everyone is selling research and conferences now.
yeah.
And I think
The,
that Danny Sullivan wrote something sort of
Danny wrote the
as,
best piece. You have to
so,
bootstrap a media company.
yeah.
You have
yeah.
to.
Well, the thing is what they may have been hoping for was that they would be like HuffPo, which sold for 300 million to AOL, and there's your 10x return. It's I don't know how much HuffPo took. They may or may not have taken more or less than that, but they did very well for themselves. TechCrunch didn't take any money and sold for what, 35 million or something like that. I mean, that's the model that you
Yeah,
really want to follow, the
but
TechCrunch model.
HuffPo took very little when it was new and then started to take it later on. But by the time it started to take it, it basically had the virality and it had the
Hmm.
audience. Whereas Giga Ohm took it at the beginning, where no
Well,
one knew what it was going to have.
yeah, the thing that HuffPo did when they were out shopping and when they were trying to drive traffic was they would basically continually 24 hours a day they had people looking at the keywords in Google that were in their sort of I'm blanking on the word, but it's their up down chart. And you know what I mean? This is terrible.
Yes.
I'm worked on those charts so many times I've built them and I can't think of the zeitgeist chart. So they would grab
Yeah.
those words and they would build titles around them. So you'd have like an article about, I don't know, someone's cat who died, and then the title would be like asbestos or something. I mean, it was ridiculous, but and that's a very extreme example. But you get the point. They were building these titles, and then they were putting in the keywords, and then they would float right to the top of the zeitgeisty terms that were being
That came
searched on.
later, but the first thing that they did was give everyone of any substance who had an audience a login and make
Sure,
them a free blogger
sure.
for HuffPo,
But
and they
the
scraped a
thing
lot
is,
of sites.
yeah, and but that alone wouldn't have done it. It was that use of the zeitgeist and the
Yeah,
keywords that really catapulted them up. And then once they had that,
yeah.
they could go to somewhere like AOL and be like, "Buy us because we're doing this, and you're going to get a lot of traffic, and it's the numbers work, right?" But they only worked
But
because of that manipulation.
they're not performing for AOL now, and neither is TechCrunch.
Yeah,
We're losing
So, I
Francine's.
mean, that's the problem.
it's not
Okay.
sustainable,
Oh,
It's
it's
not
okay.
sustainable. HuffPo is not performing for AOL, and neither is TechCrunch.
right?
You know, these business models, have to change. These media business models. I mean, page views and clicks and stuff is just doesn't seem right anymore.
The advertising agency
And I think
is,
mobile has been, largely probably
yeah. The ad
responsible for
agency
that.
business is also in disarray. Both sides of the ecosystem are in disarray. I work with an ad tech company, so I get a chance to see this, and the model changes every day. So I kind of know what happened to Giga Home,
All right, ladies, listen, we're well over our hour mark. We always try to say that we're going to keep it under an hour. We never do. We're really bad at that. This was a really fascinating conversation. I really tried to stay out of the way because you all had so much to say about it, and we're really knowledgeable. And I thank you for bringing this discussion to the forefront and to our viewers.
Get it up get it edited and up
Get it
there
up.
so we can
You get it
share
up.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we will also be launching a YouTube page for ourselves probably within the week. I started work on that, so stay tuned for some people who would rather watch us on YouTube instead of Ustream. I don't know, maybe, all right, thank you so much. I want to thank my co-hosts, Francine Hardaway.
I'm honored.
From today, you're coming to us from San Francisco, but you're usually in Phoenix. But and by the way, are you here for a little longer so we can get together for coffee?
No, I'm leaving Saturday.
Jesus. Okay. Well, Saturday gives me some chance.
Okay.
Okay. Mary Hodder, thank you.
Hello.
And Shailene Gupta.
Yep.
Did I get your name right?
Shalene.
Shailene. I told you I was going to mess it up.
It's close enough.
Shalane, so great to meet
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be on here. Thank you.
Thank you for
Well, thanks
joining
for
us
coming.
today. And of course, thank you to Hallie Sue Tucker, who had to leave sharply on the hour. We knew that, but we ran long. So thank you. Thanks to, who do I have to thank? I have to thank Ustream for providing streaming and recording services to us, to G3, and to NewTek, who provides our lovely TriCaster. We do all sorts of wonderful things with our machine. Thank you to NewTek. Philip Nelson, I have to talk to you about something. Okay. And thank you to my lovely daughter Ella, who bought me a new lipstick and said it was going to be perfect for me. So thank you, Ella. And thanks again. We will, I'll get my logo ready, and we'll see you all next week. Hopefully same time, same place. If not, we will post that. And everyone get ready and say
Bye-bye.
bye-bye. Hang on.
you. Oh, I think it was great when it goes up.